Hi, and welcome back to Financial Alchemy. The Jewish people are considered to be among the most intelligent people in the world, with superior business and money-making philosophies. Although Jewish people make up a very small percentage of the world's population, they control a significant portion of global wealth. According to statistics and estimates, a substantial portion of the American upper class is of Jewish origin. So, why is it that a minority group, having endured immense suffering, can lead in wealth and prosperity? Let's explore 10 insightful stories of Jewish business and money making to learn from them. Listen to these at least 100 times in your life. The later stories are even more profound. Story 1. The Souvenir Tree Business. A Jewish man went to Japan to invest in a business. He opened a tourist resort on an island. But because it was a new resort, very few people knew about it. For several years, the situation didn't improve much. He started to feel discouraged and wanted to give up. A friend of his advised him to plant more trees to attract more tourists. So, he came up with a unique advertising idea: plant souvenir trees to commemorate your visit to the island. Thanks to this novel initiative, many people learned about and visited his resort. In less than 2 years, the island was covered in lush greenery. In this process, the Jewish businessman didn't spend a single cent. He priced the saplings at 300 yen each, let's say, roughly equivalent to $3 for illustrative purposes. Just selling the saplings to tourists brought him millions of yen in profit. Lesson: in our lives, there's no such thing as a dead end or failure. It all depends on how each person thinks. Our ancestors taught us, rivers have bends, people have ups and downs. When facing difficulties and dead ends, change your perspective and think differently. You will reap unexpected rewards. In life, we're often limited in our solutions simply because we set boundaries in our own minds. If you want to be better than others, you have to think differently from the majority. Story 2. Selling bananas. A classic Jewish business story. Among the great Jewish business stories, we can't forget the famous banana selling story. It's about a young man named, let's say, David, a salesperson at a fruit store in a city. Because he was very intelligent and quick-witted, he was quickly promoted to manager. Thanks to his brilliant sales ideas, the store prospered. However, life isn't always smooth sailing. One day, due to the carelessness of an employee, a shipment of fruit caught fire. Although the fire was put out in time, only 15 crates of bananas were saved from the warehouse. Because they had been scorched by the fire, the bananas looked very ugly. Even though the price was reduced below the original price, no one wanted to buy them. The initial listed price was $10 per kilogram, the reduced price was $5 per kilogram, but not a single banana was sold. Wanting to sell them as quickly as possible, David came up with an idea. He noticed that the bananas tasted normal, except for the ugly peels. So, he decided to cut the bananas into pieces, along with other fruits, and sell them in trays. Although he managed to sell some, it wasn't enough to meet the sales target, and worse, the number of spoiled bananas was increasing daily. In this urgent situation, David devised another bold plan. He decided to roast the bananas because when bananas are cooked, no one cares whether the peel is beautiful or ugly. With this method, he not only solved the banana problem but also increased winter sales many times over. Lesson: the vast majority of us are often stuck in a mindset that prevents us from innovating. Even when faced with complex and difficult problems, we don't dare to deviate from our existing way of thinking. This limits our thinking. A Jewish proverb says, "Our heads are round, so all thoughts can change." If you encounter a problem that can't be solved, the best solution is to change your mindset. Therefore, if you want to succeed, you must first dare to innovate and break away from old ideas. Only then can you freely create and set foot on new lands. Besides, when pursuing success, we often hear the phrase, "seize the opportunity." But where is the opportunity? Will it notify us when it arrives? Will someone tell us where the opportunity is? The answer is no. Opportunity rarely waits for you to be ready. If you want to make money, instead of passively waiting, it's better to actively turn passivity into activity, that is, find the opportunity. The banana seller story teaches us to dare to innovate, break free from ingrained thinking, know how to turn passivity into activity, and create suitable wealth-building opportunities. Then, you'll eventually reap the rewards. Story 3. The Landlord and the Publisa. A Jewish merchant had borrowed a large sum of money from an old and cruel landlord. When the payment was due, the landlord landlord went to the merchant's house to collect the money. He had long desired the merchant's beautiful daughter, so walking on a path strewn with black and white pebbles, he hatched an idea. The landlord picked up 2 black pebbles, put them in a closed bag, and arrogantly knocked on the Jewish merchant's door. The Jewish merchant opened the door with his daughter. The landlord told the daughter to pick a pebble from the bag. If it was black, her family would have to repay the debt, and she would have to marry him. Conversely, if it was white, she wouldn't have to marry him, and the debt would be forgiven. The girl knew that both pebbles in the bag were black. So, when she took a pebble from the bag, she pretended to drop it. The courtyard was already full of pebbles, so no one knew what color pebble she had picked. The girl calmly said to the landlord, "Let's see the remaining pebble. If it's black, then I picked the white one. If it's white, then the one I just picked was black." In the end, the landlord had to leave empty-handed. Lesson: thinking in reverse is the solution. If a problem can't be explained with conventional thinking, the mathematician Carl Jacobi always thought, think in reverse, always think in reverse. Whenever he encountered an impasse in his life, we need to look at things in reverse if we want to find a solution. Learn to think differently and break the consistency of all problems to find the most optimal method. Story 4. The value of scrap. In 1946, a Jewish father and son came to New York City to do business in copper. One day, the father held up a piece of copper and asked his son, "How much is a pound of copper worth?" The son replied, "A pound of copper is worth 35 cents. The father paused for a moment and said, "That's right, a pound of copper is 35 cents. Everyone knows that. But turn this 35 cents into a doorknob." The son followed his father's instructions and sold it for 10 times its original value. 20 years later, the father passed away, and the son ran the business. He started selling pounds of copper for 100 or even 1,000 times their value by making Olympic bronze medals, copper crafts, and other items. However, what truly made him rich was the scrap heap of New York State. In 1974, the US government renovated the Statue of Liberty, and to clean up the waste, they put the scrap up for auction. But for several months, no one wanted to deal with this pile of waste. The young man, immediately after hearing the news, cut short his long vacation in France and flew back to sign a contract to collect the pile of scrap iron, copper, screws, and other waste. In the following days, he had his workers sort it. He used the copper to cast small statues of liberty, the cement and wood to make bases, and the screws, iron, and other scrap were melted down and cast into various models like keys, squares, etc. In less than 3 months, he turned that scrap heap into $3.5 million in cash. At this point, each pound of copper had increased its value 100,000-fold. Lesson: nothing in life is useless. What we call junk is simply things that are not in the right place and that we don't know how to use. On the road of life, there will be things that seem ordinary but can help us become wealthy. The important thing is whether you can turn them into money. Just like the Jewish young man above, while others considered it a useless pile of junk, he saw it as a treasure trove and succeeded. Story 5. The retired teacher. A Jewish teacher retired and bought a house near the beach. Every day, he would sit on a stone bench near his house to read and enjoy the peaceful atmosphere. One day, 3 children came and discovered the stone bench. They played and made noise, preventing him from resting. So, he decided to make a deal with them. He said, "I really enjoy watching you kids play here. How about this? If you play happily and make noise every day, I'll give each of you $5. The children were extremely excited. Every day, they came to shout and make noise for the old man to hear. 2 days later, he looked sad and said to them, "I still enjoy watching you play, but it seems my pension payment is late. Now, I can only give each of you $1. Although not happy, the children reluctantly agreed. A few days later, he was even more saddened and said to the 3 children, "I really enjoy seeing you here, but my pension has been cut. Now, I can only give you $1 per day." The children were annoyed and said, "Want to shout every day for your enjoyment? It's not worth our effort." From then on, the children no longer bothered him, and he could enjoy his peaceful time as before. Lesson: sometimes harsh measures can't solve a problem. Only by gradually guiding and steering according to the circumstances can you achieve your ultimate goal. Story 6. The philosopher Schopenhauer. The philosopher Schopenhauer said, "The greatest university is the human mind." Just like the story below, it's our way of thinking that causes us the most suffering. A daughter of a wealthy Jewish man was very sad because her friends were avoiding her, and she wanted to ask her father for money to salvage these relationships. After hearing the story, the father said nothing. Instead of giving her money, he decided to teach his daughter a life lesson. The father prepared 3 pots, a carrot, an egg, and some ground coffee. Then, he put each item into a separate pot and boiled them. The daughter didn't understand what was happening but watched attentively. After a while, the father took them out. The carrot, which was the hardest, was now soft. The egg, which was the most fragile, was now the firmest. The coffee, the soft powder that seemed useless, had now become a delicious drink with a fragrant aroma. At this point, the father asked his daughter, "Your friends are the boiling water. Do you want to be the carrot, the egg, or the coffee?" Story 7. The 2 job seekers. 2 young men were looking for work. One of them was Jewish. When they entered the company, there was a penny on the floor. The other young man walked past it like a gentleman, while the Jewish young man bent down and picked it up, to the other man's disdain. During the job interview, the other young man refused to work at a small company with low pay and a lot of work, so he left. The Jewish young man happily stayed and worked. A few years later, when they met again, the Jewish young man was now a successful business owner, while the other man was still looking for work. The other man asked the Jewish young man how he had become so successful. The Jewish young man told him, "Because you left like a gentleman and didn't pay attention to small opportunities. If you don't pay attention to pennies, you'll never be rich." In the mind of this ordinary man, he wanted instant gratification, a high position, high salary, and little work all at once. In contrast, the Jewish young man was meticulous. He valued every small penny and every opportunity he encountered. This is also the principle of success for Jewish people. Never let an opportunity slip through your fingers. Story 8. The egg seller. An egg seller brought a basket of eggs to offer to a Jewish man. The Jewish man asked him, "If you put 10 eggs in the basket every morning and take out 9 eggs every night to put in another basket, what will happen after a while?" The egg seller replied, "Then I'll have a full basket of eggs, of course." The Jewish man smiled and said to the egg seller, "That's right. I'll teach you the rule of getting rich. Never spend all the money you earn each day. Spend 9 parts and save 1 part. That means if you earn $10, spend $9 and save $1. And if you earn $100, save $10 and spend the rest." Don't underestimate this. This is the principle that made me rich. Lesson: wealth can't be achieved in a day. It's the result of long-term accumulation and wise investment. The 9/10 rule of Jewish people is the principle of saving 10% of your income and only spending within the 90% you earn. With consistent long-term accumulation, not only will you escape poverty, but you'll also save a significant amount of money. This is also the personal finance management principle that allows people, even those without a lot of money, to live a comfortable life. In contrast, there are people who don't know how to save, so even at 40, they're still struggling financially, borrowing money everywhere. Never underestimate the money you earn. That's a wise lesson for everyone. Story 9. The Rockefeller Story. Here's an interesting story about oil tycoon Rockefeller. One day, as he was walking from the mine to the train station, it started to rain heavily. His wife's clothes got soaked. Rockefeller took shelter in front of a small shop. A well-dressed woman, mistaking him for a homeless person, said, "Take this suitcase to the train station in front of the mine, and I'll give you one." At that time, $1 was an acceptable price for a poor person, and Rockefeller agreed. When they arrived at the train station, the staff greeted him, "Hello, Mr. Rockefeller." The woman then apologized to him. He humorously replied, "Even if you apologize, I won't give you back this $1 because it's legitimate earned income." When talking about the Jewish people, people say they're thrifty or, to put it more bluntly, stingy. Even Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest people in the world, only travels in economy class and eats simple meals. But their thriftiness isn't about work, it's about personal needs. Jewish people choose a simple, harmonious life and don't focus too much on material things. This is a quality that's very difficult to find in modern society. Story 10. Why the poor get poorer and the rich get richer. There's a famous story about the Jewish mindset of wealth that you can't miss. Why do the poor get poorer and the rich get richer? The answer lies in the short story below. A farmer raised 100 hens. One day, a Jewish merchant came to the village and said he would buy chickens for 100 coins each, let's say $10 for illustrative purposes. So, the farmer sold 80 hens from his family and got 8,000 coins, 800. The next day, the merchant came back and bought another hen for 500 coins, 50. The farmer sold the remaining 20 hens for 10,000 coins, 1000. Sometime later, the merchant returned, offering to buy chickens for 1,000 coins, 100 each. The farmer, having run out of hens, went to another farm owner to buy hens. This farm owner sold hens for 100 coins, 10 each. Thinking he was making a good deal, he bought all the hens on the farm. But unfortunately for him, the Jewish merchant said that due to poor market conditions, he could only buy chickens for 50 coins, 5 each. The farmer was willing to sell at a loss, hoping for a better price next time. But there was no next time because the merchant and the farm owner were the same group. The hens were still just hens, his hens, but the price of 1,000 coins, 100 per hen, was impossible because the merchant and the farm owner had already gone elsewhere to buy and sell chickens. Lesson: by now, everyone probably recognizes the familiar pattern in today's market: fatten the prey and then slaughter it. First, they use high profits to attract you to keep pouring money in, and when all your assets are depleted, they suddenly lower the price to profit from the difference and make huge profits. For investors, it's the same. To attract higher returns, the first thing to exploit is the weakness in the opponent's thinking. Everyone desires to make money, but not everyone dares to change their money-making mindset. Besides, while the wealthy are decisive in spending money, the poor are often greedy for small gains and hesitant, eventually falling into market traps without realizing it. Managing your assets is often a difficult issue, especially when you're making good profits. Therefore, you need to know how to oversee and evaluate your assets. Our ancestors used to teach us, greed leads to ruin. If there's a seemingly lucrative deal, assess who wants to pour money into you, where they come from, and what their purpose is. You even need to be highly vigilant when you're at the peak of your glory. Remember, once you invest money, people lose their rationality, especially those with small capital. Their fear and greed make them easy prey for others. The saying, "the rich get richer and the poor get poorer," lies in this very principle. Dear friends, although the Jewish people are a minority, they are the ones who manipulate the world's economic market. I hope these 10 stories, with their money-making and business mindsets, will help you apply them successfully and become more prosperous in life. Goodbye and see you in the next videos.